Hi, this is DT Grant in the Practice Podcast, the place where we dive deep into the hidden world of healers. Today, I'll be interviewing a woman named Jessica Holland, who is a Bufo Facilitator, otherwise known as 5-Meo DMT, an intuitive spiritual guide, and an Entheogenic integration specialist.
Please take me to that other place. You make me feel in another way. I've tried to find
And now, welcome Jessica Holland. Hi. I looked at your website. You mentioned that you are a minister or a pastor, and you did that for 15 years, or maybe you're still doing it. I'm curious about how you came into that.
I feel like in a sense it is still a ministerial role without the umbrella of a church.
Yeah, so you worked as a pastor or minister for what religion?
I grew up in what is known as the Wesleyan Church. My father is a Wesleyan pastor, and my whole entire life was being in the church and being, a preacher's kid. And then straight from high school, I went to ministerial school to train to be a minister as well. I met my ex-husband there. He was also in the same program. We got married and worked in the Wesleyan Church for about 10 or 11 years. And then we started our own church. It was an inner city church in downtown Syracuse, New York. We also started together a 501c3 where we were helping mostly men with drug addiction, those who were on the streets, coming out of prison. We were helping them get back on their feet. So we did that for roughly 11, 12 years together. And it just got to a point where I got burnt out. So we were pastoring together this inner city church and running this ministry at the same time and raising 7 children together.
Oh my God.
Well, yeah.
You had
It's
7 kids?
7 children and homeschooling all of the children and running these ministries. I think there was an existential crisis that happened around that time. I was 40 years old and I was just feeling very dissociative. Like, what is my world? What is this? Is this everything that I thought I would be doing with my life? And just coming to this place of deep questioning, being in the church, that had been a paradigm that had served me for my entire life and it brought a lot of safety and security. What happened was I went back at 40 to finish my requirements for my undergrad degree in theology.
Mm-hmm.
And just being at that place in my life, really scrutinizing the information, I was realizing why there was over 45,000 different Christian denominations in the world and over 200 just in the U.S. Every one of these different denominations have a different way of interpreting doctrine, a different way of interpreting scripture. So what is the truth? Is this all just subjective? If there can be this many different interpretations of the scripture, then who is right? So that was the domino that kind of started toppling all the other dominoes. If that's the premise that this isn't true, then what else is not true? So it just sent this series of questions and I didn't have any answers. My marriage, I don't know that it ever was a successful marriage. So I can't even say it was failing. It was just 2 people that had a mission that came together and had children.
Mm-hmm.
There was no emotional intimacy. So I was reevaluating my life and what I wanted. I left my marriage. I left the church that year. That's when the whole dark night of the soul really began, because the foundation I had built my world on had just entirely dismantled and crumbled beneath my feet. So there was really nothing to hang on to. So I was questioning, what is real? Is God even real? And I realized too that the concept I had carried for my entire life of God, that couldn't be what it was. It was trying to orient myself around concepts of like heaven and hell. It was all this polarization, good, evil. And I realized I think that's just not even how life works.
Right.
So just trying to reorient myself. And that took years. I was extremely depressed and hopeless and utterly lost and wishing for death. I realized I didn't really want to die. I just didn't want to live like this.
How old were your children at that time?
My youngest was 11 and my oldest was in college. He was 20, 21.
Rest in between?
Yes. So I had heard these stories about near-death experiences where people had a near-death experience and they came back and their perspective was changed on life. And I just became obsessed and read everything I could about near-death experiences. I realized this is my solution. I need to almost die, not die completely, but just die and come back and have this reset. So a really good friend of mine went to New York City to an Xavier Rudd concert, and there she met a young man that started telling her about this God molecule that facilitates a near-death experience. It gives you a reset. And she came back and she shared this information with me, and that was all I needed. Near-death experience, God molecule, reset. That's what I knew I needed in my life. So I signed up for a ceremony, not even realizing what I was going into. It was a drug, form of DMT. And growing up in the church, particularly the Wesleyan denomination of the church, we didn't do any drugs. We didn't drink alcohol. We barely even took an aspirin. I really had no idea what I was getting into and went in blindly out of this sense of desperation. I needed my life to change. And it did. That truly was the pivotal point for this major transformation that happened in my life. That's my pivotal point in history where everything changed after that for me. My relationship with God that I had in the church was always this sense of separation, like there's me and then there's God. And I won't truly experience God until I die. And that was another thing that changed after I started working with Bufo. You experience your own divinity, that there is no separation between you and the divine. This was a spiritual rebirth for me that was induced by the most powerful entheogen known to humanity at this time. So I don't see myself as separate from God. Like Jesus even said, if you've seen me, you've seen God. The Father and I are one. I understand that now.
So can you explain what an entheogen is?
So an entheogen is a drug, a chemical that induces this connection with your own divinity. So in is inward, theo is divine, gen is to begin. So an entheogen is to begin that inward connection with your own divinity. Psychedelics, you're going to have this experience where you're going to see hallucinations, distortions of reality. You may even get visited by a divine figure, but it's still you witnessing an experience. So there's still that sense of duality, which is still powerful. Those are great medicines. But Bufo is a medicine of non-duality. So it's not you experiencing the other, it's you as everything. And that makes a big difference.
So what is Bufo? Where is it from?
So Bufo is taken from the secretions of the Bufo Incilius toad found in the Sonoran Desert. The Sonoran Desert is located in Arizona and Mexico. And these toads that are about the size of a football hibernate for 9 months out of the year. And for 3 months, they surface to eat and to mate. And it's during that time that they're milked. I get my medicine from the Siri tribe, who are caretakers of these toads. One of the caretakers. It's kind of like squeezing a pimple. And it's this milky white substance that they excrete onto a glass plate, and they set that plate out in the sun, and it hardens. It bakes in the sun, and you just break that up. And once it's a powder, you weigh it out, and that's when you put heat under it, it vaporizes, and that's what you're inhaling, is the vapors of this medicine.
Interesting.
Yeah, and the experience lasts about 20 to 25, sometimes 30 minutes. It metabolizes quickly in your system, so a Bufo ceremony with me lasts about 90 minutes, even though the journey itself is only like 25, 30 minutes. We do breathing, meditation, a prayer. We kind of just settle into the space before we go into the journey. And then after the journey, we acclimate slowly back into the space with either some tea and some fruit and quietness or conversation around what just happened. After your ceremony, you can get in your car and drive home. It's a very short acting experience versus a psychedelic journey that's going to last, 6 to 8 hours.
So do people remember the experience, or is it something that happens and you don't really know what happened?
That's a good question. There's a few times where people will not remember. It will happen the first time, if it's going to happen, where they just come back and they don't even know that they journeyed. It still has an effect because the medicine starts working the day of your journey. So it's going to continue to unfold for weeks and months after the experience. And a lot of times people who say they don't remember it, when they start to fall asleep at night, they'll kind of sink into the experience, or they'll wake up at 2 or 3 in the morning. It's not visual in the sense of you see something. It's more of a soul experience that you're having. You're kind of being swooshed. People will describe it as launching in a rocket, zipping by time and space and hitting against every kind of emotion you can experience as a human. And then there's this climactic moment where everything comes together at this one single point, and then it explodes out almost like a big bang. That's the experience that you're having internally, where you're the universe. Yeah, it's pretty incredible.
So what sort of experiences have you had, or other people you've worked with?
Well, everybody's journey is uniquely different. The landscape of your soul is different each time you come to the medicine. If you have a journey and you have these realizations where somebody that you needed to forgive that was holding you in this place of deep resentment and even hatred, the medicine may give you this new perspective on how to see that. And in that one moment of understanding, you're able to let go of all that anger and resentment that you've been carrying. That has happened for me with my ex-husband. I carried a lot of anger and hatred for him for how our marriage went. Not everything is done in that one ceremony. It rolls out for weeks and months. During those first couple of weeks after my first journey, I was laying in meditation and feeling all this energy of resentment and pain. And I had this experience of seeing my ex-husband in this light. And as he was in this light, he had the realization of the hurt that he had caused the people he loved because of his own pain. And everything just whisked away, and he was washed in this light. The energetic cord that was connecting us, all of this traveled down into my own being and my own recognition of all the pain I've caused people because of the pain I've carried. We can't see fully because it's obscured by our own pain. So as he was released from his burdens, I was released simultaneously, and I just wept, and it was all cleared. And from that day on, it's never come back. I've seen him in a whole different way, and I see myself and I see all of humanity in a whole different way. It's like taking this wide angle lens and putting that on the end of the camera instead of this narrow lens where you're only seeing a little bit of the picture. The lens has expanded and you're seeing so much more of what actually is. It's really a shift in consciousness. You see things differently.
That's pretty amazing. I can imagine so many people benefiting from that. I heard a big thing about Bufo is ego dissolution.
Mm-hmm. And some people call it an ego death. And that's where you get the idea of a near-death experience, because for about 7 to 10 minutes, your ego is what we call offline. It's not firing. So that part of your brain that houses your sense of self goes dark. But other parts of the brain are firing that don't normally fire any other time. And so you're still having this awareness, but who's aware? Who's witnessing the experience? And that's the phenomenon that's so transformational, because there's this remembering that we are not these finite beings. When you come back from your journey, integration is the merging of this beingness with your ego. And that gives the ego a lot of comfort, because ego is attached to this realm, which is bound in fear and competition, struggle, survival. And when there's this remembering that you are beyond even this lifetime, it helps you to not get so caught up in the everyday stuff that gets people caught up in these mind pitfalls, like all this really matters, because then you realize, wait, this doesn't even matter. This fear is not even real. So it kind of it shifts the pieces on the board, so to speak, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. So just about some things about Bufo, is there anything you have to do to prepare? Like with ayahuasca, you need a specific diet, or you can't take certain medications. Is there anything like that with Bufo?
Yeah, absolutely. There's drug contraindications, SSRIs, SNRIs, and MAOIs. So all of these drugs work with either the serotonin receptors or the dopamine receptors, but in a different way. So you want to make sure that you're weaned off of any prescription drugs in that class 4 to 6 weeks before you journey, so that your system not only has a chance to clear all of that out, but it gives those receptors time to reset before you introduce Bufo.
So 4 to 6 weeks.
That's why they have a consultation with me, and they fill out the intake form, just a complete medical screening. This for everything that could possibly interfere with them being a good candidate for a Bufo journey, because I can see exactly what medications they're on. And if they're not, I have them work with their doctor to create a weaning protocol that's long. And then at the tail end of their weaning, I recommend that they start microdosing psilocybin, which does help buffer at the very end of the weaning process before they journey.
So if people are not taking any sort of antidepressant medication, do they not need psilocybin buffers?
I'm a big proponent of microdoses. It's the only protocol that is safe for everybody to do. Bufo is not, that you have to meet the requirements for that. Same with ayahuasca, any of the other sacred medicines. There's definitely people who are not going to be a good fit for those. People who are in a mental crisis should not do Bufo. Anytime there's a big destabilization in your personal life, you should wait before you do Bufo, because Bufo can be destabilizing. And that's something that is intentional. You want that because it shakes things up for you. And we need things to be shaken up to create a shift. Bufo is a catalyst. So you want to go into that with intention. For the clients that work with me, I have a guide that I wrote on how to prepare for a Bufo journey. We meet, on Zoom calls and to kind of flesh out intentions, making sure that they're going in with their eyes wide open and they know exactly what they're getting into. And then there's follow-up integration work where there's a lot of support there in processing the experience. So that's very different from someone doing this one-off Bufo experience and then they're just going home and there's nobody there to help them interpret the experience. That's unsafe and not productive in any way.
So bringing this back to the microdosing question and psilocybin, do you provide that for people or do they have to find it somehow?
I grow my own mushrooms and grind up mushrooms to powder, weigh it out, dose everything out into capsules. I follow the Paul Stamets protocol, so it's stacked with niacin and lion's mane.
Paul Stamets is an American mycologist and entrepreneur who came up with a protocol on how to take psilocybin. In his protocol, he suggested combining psilocybin with 2 non-psychoactive supplements, including lion's mane, which is a mushroom, as well as niacin or nicotinic acid. In his protocol, this combination apparently enhances cognitive function and neuroplasticity. And back to the interview.
And these are all vegan capsules. Everything is organic. I sell 30-day kits.
Is there a specific diet that's recommended before or during or after?
Bufo was discovered in the 70s, so it's a fairly new medicine. There's no tradition. Ayahuasca has hundreds of years of tradition surrounding it, and there's a whole diet. I have explored where people change their diet. They'll stop drinking alcohol. They won't smoke weed or do any other drugs a week beforehand versus those who just come in and maybe they even drank the night before. Basically, those people who set the most intention around the experience get the most out of the experience. But you do have these outlier experiences as well where they wind up having this profound experience that they didn't expect. They didn't put a whole lot of intention into it, and their life completely shifts. So it's kind of a mystery bag when it comes to that. I mean, for me as a facilitator, I'm going to recommend, yes, no substances at least a week before you journey, set your intention. But I don't tell people, oh, don't eat meat. As long as you are fasted 5 hours beforehand where your system is clear, you're fine.
So before taking it, 5 hours before, you don't eat or drink anything?
You don't eat, but you can drink water.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes. You just want your system to be clear. It just helps with the metabolism of the medicine.
Are there contraindications of doing Bufo?
Really just, like I said, the SSRIs, SNRIs, MAOIs, antidepressants. And if you're in a place of destabilization, certain mental disorders like schizophrenia, any kind of personality disorder. I know facilitators that will still serve people with personality disorders, but I don't personally.
Bufo is also known as 5-Meo DMT or 5-methoxy-dimethyltryptamine. It acts as an agonist to serotonin receptors. So like ayahuasca, which also contains DMT, it is contraindicated if you are currently taking an SSRI or SNRI or MAOI and other antidepressants, as Jessica mentioned. Because Bufo and many antidepressant medications increase serotonin activity, this poses very high risks if combining the secretions of the Bufo alvarius toad with certain medications. And there's very little studies that have been done on it, but there is some evidence that it may decrease depression, anxiety, and stress. Just to note, the Bufo alvarius toad has now been renamed Incilius alvarius. Now returning to Jessica, what about drug addiction? Is it helpful?
There's people who have struggled with drug addiction, and they've told me that Bufo has completely changed their life, down to heroin addicts and people who struggle with alcohol. But I do want to add this, that it's not a magic pill. Even if somebody was listening to this and saying, oh, I'm struggling with this and I'll just do Bufo one time and I'll be fixed.
Right.
It's not like that.
Right.
That's part of the preparation, is understanding how the medicine works, and the fact that it's a consciousness expanding medicine. So seeing things differently is what creates the change a lot of times.
Mm-hmm.
That's the work that Bufo is part of. Now that you've reconnected with yourself through this Bufo experience, integration is really home to yourself. So now you're speaking your truth instead of being silenced. And parts of you that stayed hidden because of societal programming are now stepping forward, and you're accepting yourself with love and understanding and grace that you weren't able to give yourself before. So that's the magic.
So I want to finish up about contraindications. I had heard some things about cardiac risks. Is there any contraindication with heart-related issues?
That's a great question. That's part of the medical screening. That's kind of a case by case. There is a huge adrenaline release and norepinephrine and epinephrine release in a journey.
People who might have arrhythmias or like abnormal heart rhythms.
Right. It's more of the electrical functioning of the heart. And that doesn't disqualify them. I have arrhythmia, and I still journey, and I'm fine. So it's case by case. But yeah, some people wouldn't qualify.
So aside from the things you need to not be taking, what are the risks? Or are there risks aside from mixing medicines?
So if you pass the medical screening and you're in a place where you're stable enough, there really are no risks, because the screening eliminates anyone that has risks. There's a lot of other avenues. I'm currently building a network of different providers that either carry other medicines or have different therapeutic models.
You mentioned before integration. Can you explain a little more of what that is?
Imagine one of those snow globes. When it's sitting on your shelf, everything looks nice and clear. But then when you shake it, everything gets stirred up. That's similar to what Bufo is going to do. Parts of ourselves that carry shame carry so much potential. So once those parts of ourselves begin to get uncovered, then they open up all these gifts that we didn't expect. So integration is really just about bringing home every aspect of who you are. A lot of people feel homesick. When I hear somebody say I'm homesick, it indicates to me that they're missing themselves.
They are homesick after doing Bufo or before?
Before Bufo. People come because they're searching, and they don't even know what they're searching for. They just feel like something's missing. And what they realize is they have been missing parts of themselves all along. So integration is just uncovering those parts of ourselves that have been hidden away, and we bring them home. We open the doors and allow those parts in. Integration is making a space that's safe, and these parts that carry pain can come forward and be healed and unburdened. It's really beautiful. Bufo is like, it shakes things up like that snow globe and reveals the aspect that we've been shutting down, suppressing. It's going to stir those things to the surface.
Right. Got it. So another thing you mentioned on your website is combo, which when I did ayahuasca, they offered this. I'm not sure how you do it and if you do, but they burned 5 holes in my arm with incense, and sounds similar, where it's like got dried secretions from the frog on the stick, and then they wet it and wipe it on the holes where the burns were in your arm. And you need to drink like a liter or 2 of water before.
Yeah.
And then you might swell in your face, you might get tingly, and then you puke.
Did you start puking then?
I did. And they said it makes people feel so great afterwards. I didn't notice anything, but they had said it's really good to cleanse your system. I don't know how you use it.
You described it perfectly. I said it's not physical purge, it's an energetic purge. Kind of the same as you get in ayahuasca. Combo at my retreats, Combo is part of the preparation day because it is going to clear your system and help you get ready for the Bufo experience. And so it pairs really well with Bufo. So it's frog and toad working together.
Oh, so the Bufo is toad and combo is frog. Interesting. Frog and toad.
Frog and toad. I know.
Okay. I'm just going to briefly ask about a retreat that you do. Is it in Tulum or do you do it elsewhere?
So for 2 years, I was going to Tulum. I had a retreat center there. My next retreat is going to be in North Carolina, and it's going to be a 4-day retreat in August. There'll be combo served at that retreat, and I have an integration specialist coming in. She's a somatic psychotherapist. She gives us these activities that we do to help regulate the nervous system after a Bufo experience. It's a deeply connecting experience when you've isolated a chunk of time for that intention to be together with a group of 10, 12 other guests and facilitators. It's really beautiful.
I just have one last question then. So I call this the Practice Podcast, and I ask everyone I interview what their practice is. Spiritual, healing, psychological, emotional, whatever that is for you, if you have a practice.
I would have to say that I don't have really any other practice other than the practice of presence, the practice of awareness and recognition of when I'm not present, like aware of anything that I may be resisting. That is something that working with Bufo has taught me, because Bufo is a medicine of complete reality. It's we call it the isness of everything, and it's just basically what is right now, and it's going to show you very unsympathetically what is, and whether you like it or not. And when we don't like it, that reveals our resistance. So my practice is to be present with my own system and even subtle resistance that I have towards what is. And I know when there's full acceptance, because there's this undeniable, unexplainable peace and joy that comes in. I'm very random. I will do things very differently throughout my day. The only other practice I have is flossing my teeth daily, drinking 100 ounces of water, and that's it.
Well, that's your practice.
Yeah, that's my practice, and just being present.
Being present, yeah. And I think being in the past or the future can lead to a lot of suffering.
People think of presence as perfection. It's not. Presence is really just being with this whole chaotic inside out. It's not just all love and light. It's just being present with whatever is.
Right.
Hey, what did you say your occupation is?
So I'm an osteopath. I'm a physician, family doctor, but I only do osteopathic manipulation. Most osteopaths become regular doctors.
All right. Wow. That's intriguing. So what are some of the things that you treat?
I mostly get referrals for pain, but I'll treat anything. But people with anxiety, depression, pain, migraines, I take insurance. But then people have other things, or there may be digestive stuff. Also, I've done a lot of independent reading on Ayurveda and Tibetan medicine. And so I'll bring in that. And I also have a long history of diet. My dad had a heart attack and died when I was 6, and I have high cholesterol. And so since I was 6, basically started on this path of understanding health.
Oh my God, wow. I've always studied nutrition. I'm going to a retreat. It's an Ayurvedic retreat in India for a month, the whole month of February.
Where?
But it's the same town the Dalai Lama lives in. So it's
Dharamsala.
in northern.
Yeah.
That's where
I've been there.
How do you like it?
Oh, it's so peaceful. It's amazing. Yeah. I went there because I was fascinated by this Tibetan doctor who has since died, but he was the Dalai Lama's physician for 20 years. So I went in 2001, right before I started med school. And the Dalai Lama was doing a teaching, so I went to his temple and saw him. I did Vipassana meditation. I did a yoga retreat up there. I mean, I'm sure it's much more developed now. It was a long time ago. But it's beautiful. It's just peaceful, you know. And I wanted to see India chaos, so I left, and then I was horrified. Also, when you were talking about being in the present, you're all about surviving one day to the next, one moment to the next, and there's so much chaos all around you that you can't worry about the past or think about the future, and you're just surviving. That's how I always felt in India.
Oh, wow. That's how I feel in New York City.
Really? I came back to New York from India, and I was like, where are all the people? It's so quiet.
Wow.
How India is compared to New York. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for all of this. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
I'd love to thank Jessica for joining us today on this interview and for sharing her wealth of knowledge about the experiences she's had helping other people go through transformations using Bufo, otherwise known as 5-Meo DMT. I'd also love to thank the band Modera Cayenne for sharing their amazing song, To Find You. If you'd like to know more about this podcast, please go to www.thepractice-podcast.com and follow me on the Practice Podcast. This is DT Grant wishing you a magical and inspiring journey towards health. Thanks for listening.